Hi, my name is Sunita Verma, and I am a consultant from an outfit in Atlanta. We teach ISO standards to organizations micro size, small, medium, and large, and across and the entire US as well as in any other country. You may ask, what is an ISO? So ISO is not in search of, rather it means International Organization for Standardization. Standardization in processes, there are about 22,700 standards in the entire globe. And out of these standards, we teach about 4 to 5. But whether you're doing one of these six or whether you're doing one from these 22,700, the process is still the same. And we're going to learn what this process is. So anytime you want to do an ISO, you want to start with something called a gap assessment. A gap assessment is, if we consider this to be in phases, if we consider this to be in steps, a gap assessment is step 1 or phase 1, as some people will call it. Or some people also call it a gap analysis. It's one and the same. So what you do here is you look at the standard, you look at what your processes are and see where they mash and where there are discrepancies or there are gaps. This is not an audit. This is more about reviewing what you have in place and what needs to be done based on the standard. A gap is always done with the standard you want to achieve for comparisons. Now, whenever you do a gap assessment, there will be a gap assessment report. An output is a gap assessment report. The step 2 or phase 2 is going into remedying or doing the remediation of these gaps. So this is called documentation and implementation. Phase 1, phase 2. Okay. This is where the consultant works towards helping you document the compliance related documents and also helping you implement. This is by far a very long step wherein it takes about, depending on the size of the organization, the processes, number of people and locations, this could be anywhere from 2 to 3 months to as it goes on for like an year. It depends on the size of the organization. Implementation is also when your entire team gets ingrained within the process and they understand, different process owners understand what they are responsible for. So it takes a little bit longer time. And hence when I say, it can take up to 2 to 3 months for documentation implementation, or it can take longer. Now, I didn't talk about gap assessment because generally this takes about at a minimum 1 day, or it can take up to about a week or 2 weeks, depending again on the size of the organization and if there are multiple locations. But generally speaking, it should be done within a couple of days. This is within few months. And then the last step or phase 3 is management review and internal audit. This is the phase 3, wherein you will go through a review, which is a few hours of a meeting, and an internal audit. And an internal audit is quite similar to the gap assessment, the only difference being that internal audit is going to give you findings. In gap assessment, when we do a gap assessment, it's reviewing where there are gaps and they are not as a finding, so you don't do a corrective actions there. But in internal audit, evidence are reviewed that you have whatever system you put in place is working efficiently. It's giving you those improvements you're looking for. So this exercise results into finding. That's a very layman way of explaining it. To see the differences between the exercise would look kind of very similar when the audit is done. An audit timeline is also similar to the gap assessment. It will be the same amount of number of days that would have taken. So it could be like 2 to 1 to 2, 1 being the lowest, the lowest number of days that you need. So 1 day or a maximum of a week or 2 weeks. That's what I have seen. But that is in proportionate. Again, that depends on the number of people, the size of the organization in that way, the location, number of locations, the processes. So it takes into account all these factors. And after this step is the final step, wherein you go through an external audit. And this is done by a third-party agency who comes and reviews all the documents and make sure that you have the right information in place. Once you have gone through an external audit, this is done in 2 steps, stage 1, stage 2. This is document review, doc review, or this is review of evidence. So once this is done, you go into status wherein you become certified. You are certified here. So this is the entire process. Now, regardless of which standard you follow, you will go through each of these steps throughout the certification. It starts with a gap, it starts with documentation, implementation, and it goes into management review, internal audit. Now, whether you use a consultant or whether you're doing it in-house, the same process has to be followed, and is generally by far most, like 98% of the time, that's what everybody follows, because that's how they want to know. So even if you intend to do it in-house, you would want to get a checklist to start with gap, and then based on these gaps come up with documents. There are also various toolkits available, documentation toolkits based on the standard you're looking for. And there are also checklists for audit, but you will need a little bit more training on the audit, and you want to also find out if those trainings are being done, which organization you are looking for. But nevertheless, this is the process. And like I said, this process, the entire process, depending on, again, which standard we are talking, the number of location, what is the size and width of your organization, it could take anywhere from 90 days to up to an year or more to get the system in place and have you certified. This is it from me. Thank you so much for watching.